I will share my screen with the workspace. I can go ahead. I'm Megan Powers. I am this is my third year as an Adobe champion. I lead a team at CarMax called Digital Data Strategy, and we are responsible for implementing all of our Adobe Analytics tagging. Half analysts, half developers. We also own Adobe Target and Launch and several other tools. Um, and I've been working in space for a long while. I'm at CarMax for almost a decade now. So, yeah, excited to be here. Jeff, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay. So my name is Jeff Bloomer. I recently just joined Cardinal Health, where I lead a team of 4. So I'm still learning the ropes there. So as I learn more there, I'll be able to tell you more about what I do. So, but I have been an Adobe champion now for 4. Well, I'm a 4-time Adobe champion. I've been doing this for 10, 11 years, or something like that.
Yeah, you ran out
A
of
while.
fingers. Yeah.
Enough. Let's see. There's a couple of us here that have been on the Rockstar stage. It was really exciting this year, I will say. So getting to share, just to be up there on the stage, I'll just leave it at that. So, but yes, I'll just go ahead and stop there and let the next person talk.
I guess I'll go next.
Yep.
I'm Jen Dungan. I am a 5-time analytics champion. Thank you. Basically, I do analytics everything at my company, which is Torstar, which is basically a newspaper company up in Canada, including the Google Analytics and the Marfield Analytics. So, yeah, like I said, analytics everything, and through the entire life cycle from requirements to implementation to testing to building reports and teaching people how to fish. So let's hopefully teach you guys how to fish today.
And I am Nick Walter. I'm a first-year Adobe champion and been working in Adobe for 7, 8 years, something like that going on. So I've been around for a while. But yeah, all right, let's go ahead and get started.
Okay. Can you all see the workspace?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Alrighty. All right. Well, let's see. Let's start out with a couple of the questions that were submitted via the intake form for this office hours, and then we'll move on to any that are in the chat. As always, like please feel free to drop any questions in the chat. We'll do our best to respond in the chat, or just bring them up live so everyone can hear our answers. And then if with any time left, we pulled in some stuff that we've been asked about lately, so we can cover those as well. Okay, this first question is about the SDR, or solution design requirements, I think is what that acronym stands for. This person asked, has anyone ever automated their SDR updates and variable mapping in Snowflake? We're attempting to do this, and I'd like advice from the experts. They linked out to an Experience League article here, which I read through a little bit earlier, which was very interesting. I dropped in a couple comments, but I'd love to hear from the other champs too. Our team has not done this, but it is a really intriguing idea. I'd worry a little bit about access to Snowflake. Maybe that's not an issue at your organization. It is a little bit at mine. So what our team does is we have the SDR in a shared Excel file on our team has an external facing Microsoft Teams channel, which everyone has access to. That's kind of our team's go-to resource for all of our documentation. So our training documents, our training videos, our all the requirements for analytics for every site that we own, the SDR and the variable maps for all of the different sites that we own. And those are our master source of truth documents. So that works well for us because everyone has access to it versus like a Snowflake or a GitHub or something where you have to get special access. But, other champs, your thoughts?
From my perspective, we don't have an automated process either, but I tend to do documentation before I do implementation. So automation probably wouldn't help me out a lot because I'm sitting there, I'm figuring out what I want to track, what I want to do. I document it, make sure that it's solid, maybe do some testing. And then the last step is me actually going into an Adobe and actually setting up the new dimensions and metrics that I need. So, it's kind of a bit of a reverse. Now, from where we store our information, because we sometimes have to work with vendors who don't have access to our internal Confluence, I actually store my documents up in Google Drive. And then I have links to those documents from our Confluence. And of course, training videos and supplementary documentation that goes along with everything all gets posted into our Confluence page. Nick, Jeff, do you have stuff to add?
Never really went there. I almost hate to bring up the fact that we actually, so this is quite a while back that Kroger actually used an Excel version of the SDR to run the implementation, but I even hesitate to bring up how that was all done because they wanted to actually use that as the tag management system at the time, and that was a bit dangerous. So I would not recommend that as a solution long term. So I would say not the way you want to go. So, but I've not heard of this particular approach. So I'd be kind of intrigued as to how that's being done. So,
yeah, this is the first I've heard of it being automated. So
yep.
I've just, usually see documentation in Excel somewhere or maybe Confluence, but not quite like this. I'm actually looking through this page right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that link right there, that's an idea. So it's not actually implemented. It was somebody, hey, is there some way to do it, like an easy button to get it all out? And I mean, if you start in your analytics and then you just want to get it documented, I guess, like I said, that would work. But for me, because I go the opposite direction,
right?
I mean, I have it all documented before I even make any changes in Adobe. So yeah. Hey, the person who asked the question is here. Okay, so for the recording purposes, they said this is my question, and we have a shared Excel doc. Difficult to keep up with data layer changes and related bug tickets, which is why I want to automate. Yeah, I hear you. Documentation is tricky. And I'm solely responsible for the documentation, basically, in my organization. And I will tell you, I have a master document of like everything, which is over 500 pages long. So I feel your pain. Plus a spreadsheet of information. Yeah, I haven't actually, I don't have any automated tips per se, just kind of persistence, and making sure that you're keeping things in line with all the changes that are going through. Yes, yikes, I know. My developers all make fun of me, but I also know that they appreciate it, so it balances out.
Gotcha. Yeah, I was asking if there's one person or team. It sounds like multiple. I mean, some of this, I think automation would be great. I think also going along with automation is just getting together with all those multiple partners and writing some governance rules and publishing those, right? Like, which isn't an Adobe Analytics tip, but making sure that everyone is doing the same standards, compliant with the same thing. If you're going to do the automation, knowing how the automation works and runs, and if you're automating, who's still the one person or team kind of ultimately responsible for that.
Gee, reminds me of an old webinar that Jen and I did once upon a time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, like governance is always still needed with and without automation, I think.
Yep.
And yeah, if you are dealing with multiple people, there's also, you probably are going to want to need to make sure that you've got some sort of review process in place, that, people aren't just willy-nilly going in, adding this, adding that, but, like that's a surefire way to have stuff missed or have stuff just not in a consistent manner. Like, again, maybe you need to designate, like, the captain of the team, give them the designated hat, or share it along. Like, maybe for this quarter, this person is the captain, and for this quarter, that person's the captain. But making sure that you're doing regular reviews, just like developers will do peer reviews of coding to make sure that things are following along with, adherence to performance and consistency within the application. You're going to want to try and make sure that you have that governance, that review process, to make sure that you have consistency within your documentation. I know that doesn't help with the automation. I get it. But I mean, hey, if we can somehow figure out a way to automate, that would be great. Maybe you need to use some APIs, at least to get a basic list of, here's all the dimensions we have available, here's all the metrics we have available, and the descriptions of those items. At least it's not maybe a full automation, but it's a partial one, because you can extract every custom dimension and every custom metric using the APIs. Oh, great. Yeah. So they're using APIs, and that's good.
There you go.
Right. Well, sounds good. Well, yeah, we can keep chatting about that in the chat, or come back to it as well. I guess for now, we can move on to the sandbox question. And this just came in today or yesterday. I didn't have a ton of time to add a bunch of notes, but they were wondering about sandbox environments for training. Is there more than one sandbox, or are there standard ones that everyone uses? And because I should have the better answer to this, but I typically use like my champions sandbox. So I'm curious to hear from the other champions, but I do know that there are some resources on Experience League for this.
I mean, yeah, the only sandbox that I use is, like you said, the champion sandbox. Every time I've had to do trainings, at least internally, for the most part in Workspace, you can't screw anything up as far as showing them how to work your Workspace.
Right.
So you can't change anything. So we would just use, create a new Workspace and learn in there. Occasionally be in the dev environment, and because nobody cares about the dev environment for the most part. So do a little bit of work in there potentially. But as far as like a general sandbox, other than the one that the champion group has, I personally don't know of another one that's openly available.
There is a sandbox that goes along with the LinkedIn course. So for people taking the Adobe Analytics LinkedIn course, there is a sandbox for people to go in and play. But again, I see that more for people who don't have access necessarily to Adobe Analytics themselves, like they're trying to learn it, or for if you're trying to follow along with those LinkedIn lessons and you need that specific data set to match up to whatever the lesson is. I kind of agree with Nick. Most people don't have right access, so there's not much they can screw up by going in and playing around in Workspace, pulling out your production data. Now, I, like Nick, I have a dev environment. Sometimes I will have multiple dev environments depending on if I really want to try something offbeat, that I want to see if it's going to work ahead of time, and I need it like fully isolated so I can see what's going on. But that's for more like implementation type stuff. Like, I'm going to test out this code or test out this and send it in, make configuration changes and whatnot to a dev environment, make sure that the data is coming in the way that I'm happy with before I actually make those changes in production and deploy those out. But I don't know if that's the kind of sandbox you're looking for. If you're talking about training specifically, that sounds more like you're training your business users to build reports, and it's probably better for them to see real data rather than dev data, because dev data is going to be sometimes a little off. Sometimes it's developers have done something and like the data is just not well formed because it's dev, and not a lot of it because you don't have the volume. So I'm not sure if
Well, if you wanted to do production data, you could always create a virtual report suite, which basically they can't do any damage to if you do a virtual report suite.
well, you can't do any damage to the regular report suite either.
Well, true, I know, but that way you can go ahead and create. Whoa, am I getting feedback or what's going on?
I don't know. I heard that too. I don't know who it came from.
Someone's racing cars.
Yeah, try that again, Jeff.
Test 1 2 3 1 2.
Yeah.
You're good.
Okay, I don't know. I was afraid that maybe I was causing feedback or something. No, no. What I was saying is, I always kind of think of a virtual report suite as like a data view, like in SQL or something like that. That you could always like set up maybe as a way to do something like that, because it's complete read-only thing that somebody could mess around with. Ish. I don't know. It's and I was thinking of that kind of like off the cuff. It's not the best or perfect solution. And like you said, even in production, you can't mess things up if you're having people like save things off and stuff like that. It's just more about cleanliness and things like that, because you know how it is when people are trying to create their own reports, they're creating their own segments and all that stuff. If you got a virtual report suite, all that stuff is technically sort of off to the side. I don't know. It's just,
or you don't give them the rights to create their own segments, and then you don't have to worry about clutter. That's what I do.
Yeah. I know it's we can go down this rabbit hole all we want, but I'm just saying there's a whole bunch of different ways that you can, slice.
Yeah, there is, and there's no right way. I mean, it's really what works for you and your organization, as opposed to what works for me, what works for Jeff, what works for Nick, and what works for Megan, because we are all going to have slightly different processes, and they all work for us.
Yep.
Yeah. So I wasn't sure if this question was more for like, hey, we already have Adobe Analytics, right? We just want a sandbox to play with it. In which case, I think we have a lot of good suggestions here.
Sure.
Like you can create a template in your workspace tools, and then when new users or you log into Adobe Analytics, they'll see that template there, and you can direct people there like, hey, this is our sandbox template where it's, safe to explore and do whatever you want and build. There's been a lot of ideas out there for like how to train your users. You can populate practice questions in that template to train new users, like, hey, make a save as version and answer these questions. That's a good way to practice. You can curate the data in that template. So if there's data that not everyone should see, right, you can add in your own custom metrics, evars, and props, and make sure that everyone has the right access. You can use the virtual report suite, like Jeff said. And then, I would definitely recommend having a separate report suite just for dev and QA. That's going to be helpful for sandbox and training, but also just any type of QA data validation, keeping that data out of your prod data, of course. And then if you don't already have analytics and want a sandbox, I think Jen mentioned there is a LinkedIn course that they'll give you a sandbox to play with. Anyone know of anything else, like besides the LinkedIn course, where you can go?
I think they use the same sandbox for like the LinkedIn course, and just I believe that there's a link that just, hey, want access to the sandbox even without going through the course. I know it first came about because of the course, but gotcha. I think they've kind of like just created a page. Hopefully, if you Google it, you can find it if you're looking for it. But again, you also have no control over what data is in that sandbox, which is it can be frustrating because sometimes, as you will see in like some of our samples, as we do this, because we're doing it out of a sandbox, the data isn't exactly realistic looking. It's the same data month after month after month, which gives you some really unrealistic visuals.
Not variable enough. Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
It's like, yep.
Okay, awesome. All righty. On from there. Any questions in the chat? Yeah. Okay. All right. So let's see. Jen, why don't we bump you, because these are just older questions. You said you've been getting a lot about marketing channels lately, so why don't we jump down to that?
Sure. So yeah, I know this comes up quite frequently.
Quite frequently, yep.
Yeah, and this is something that I probably want to dig into like a fully dedicated presentation on. But it comes up periodically where people are like, why don't my marketing channels, like I break the marketing channels down by tracking code, why isn't this data looking good? They'll take their organic search and they'll break it down by tracking code, and they'll be like, or like, maybe not their like their paid search, and they'll be like, well, why do I have this specified value? Like, why don't these match? First things first, they have usually different attribution models. By default, marketing channels is a 30-day attribution, and by default, tracking code is 7-day attribution. And you can change that, and that's fine, but they also still fundamentally do different things. Tracking code is specifically looking for your tracking codes in your URL. So either your CID or your UTMs, or maybe you're trying to read both and shove it all in. Like, whatever your implementation is, it is specifically, tracking code is about the actual tracking codes, whereas marketing channels looks at other stuff. It looks at, are you coming from search engines? What's your referrer? This, that, like there's a lot more granular rules. And even if you set them to the same attribution, they're not always going to match up because organic search isn't going to have a campaign code. And with marketing channels, direct does not override a specific marketing channel. That's by design, because if it did, your 30-day attribution would mean nothing. It would never be 30 days of attribution. It would be visible, because every visit would trigger a new marketing channel.
Right.
So I've kind of put down like a little sample flow, wherein visit 1 is direct. And on your page 1, your marketing channel is set specifically to direct. And there's a marketing channel instance triggered. And then page 2, the value of direct is retained, and you have no instance fired. And that'll continue on throughout that visit. The next visit, let's say it's 2 days later, you have organic search or maybe paid search. But whatever, the marketing channel will now be set to that new channel. And the instance will be triggered, and then so on and so forth. Now, maybe you have a paid search. I didn't put this into the sample, but with a campaign, that campaign would actually be tracked, on that first page. If it was like a paid search and you had campaign saying great sale or whatever. So that would be set there. But then on the next view, the direct, because it's direct, it's not going to override. So you're going to maintain that organic search or that last touch. And again, depending on where your campaign codes are, there's going to be mismatches. So again, this is just kind of a sample of flows. And hopefully you guys are following me, and hopefully this is making sense. But if you scroll down a little bit, I just put in a sample breaking down marketing channels to tracking code. And I also put in the instances. A lot of people don't realize this. There are special metrics specifically for the instance when an attribution level variable like marketing channels or EVARs is set. When it's explicitly set, there's an instance. And when it is not explicitly set, you still have those page views because that value is retained. So you can see that there's very different numbers between your page views, your marketing channel instance, and your campaign tracking code instance. So if you look at like the other campaigns, you'll see that first line is like undefined. Again, this is sample data, so I apologize. It's not the greatest because that's actually showing a campaign tracking code instance. So I guess somebody literally set undefined, but you might see unspecified in that other campaign because that other campaign might be coming from a referrer or whatever it may be. And then if you scroll down to the next table, Megan. Oh, thanks, Jeff. You'll see that I did the opposite way. I did campaign tracking code to marketing channel. Here's where you really see that unspecified tracking code, but there are marketing channels underneath that. And you'll definitely see a very big difference between the marketing channel instance and the campaign tracking code instance, wherein that unspecified definitely did not have a tracking code instance set because it's unspecified. It's blank. But your marketing channel still has direct or referring domains because they didn't have any campaign codes in them. So they're very, very different things. And so if you are setting up your marketing channels, I always recommend if your marketing channel is based on a rule for campaign codes, make sure you set your marketing channel detail. And if Megan, if you just want to just do a search in the search components for marketing channel, make sure that your details are set to your campaign codes when it makes sense, or to something else when it's like based on another rule, like maybe organic search, you want to set it to your search engine. Maybe referrer, you want to set it to which website referred you to. But that marketing channel detail, that's the one that you want to do the breakdowns with. You want to make sure, because those marketing channel and marketing channel detail are always at the same attribution. They're using the same marketing channel instance. Those are the ones that are explicitly connected. So hopefully this helps break out some of the confusion between marketing channels and tracking codes. And I'm definitely going to go into more detail in a future session.
As opposed to last touch channel and last touch channel detail. Because those are actually, there's a difference.
Oh, we have a question. Could the marketing channel derived field be shared across all data views into the shared dimensions, or does it need to be created for every data view? So you're talking about CJA derived fields, correct?
Oh,
It needs to be made every time.
Yeah.
There's no synchronization between them, at least not yet. So, unless somebody knows differently.
I don't have CJA, so I'm going to go with your answer, Nick.
I remember the work we had to do on that. So
yeah, but I also know that CJA and direct has some interesting connotations. CJA's marketing channels work slightly differently than AA.
Yeah, a lot of the marketing channel rules when you get into CJA that are standard with AA kind of get thrown out the window. Yeah. So it's a little bit different. I mean, the ideas are still basically the same, but the setup is a little bit different, and it's a longer conversation.
Isn't everything? I'm pretty sure that if you gave us 3 hours to talk about any of these topics, we could talk for 3 hours about.
Probably. Although I will tell you, if somebody's switching from AA to CJA, expect your marketing channels numbers to be different. They just simply will be vastly different.
Yep. Well, your numbers will be different on a lot of things just because of the behavior of CJA in general.
Yeah. Once you're talking about anything at the visit level, anything at the unique visitor level, it's going to be very, very different. Warn your marketing teams that they're going to be very, very different beforehand, because they're going to have to restate some KPIs. Probably I've had a lot of very long and complicated conversations about that.
Yep.
Be forewarned if anybody's switching to CJA that there will be questions and conversations specifically around marketing channel.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I thought we could, again, like this could be a very lengthy thing, but I thought I could share just the admin piece of what Jen was describing, just in case anyone's not familiar with that.
Thank you.
So this is can you guys see the marketing channel manager?
Yeah.
Okay. So here's, where you can go set up all your different marketing channels. Jim was talking about the overrides. You generally don't want those to happen on direct internal referring domains, stuff like that, because if that's the legitimate first way someone gets to your site, then they'll get credit for that. But otherwise, there's usually another source sending folks to your site, and then they're probably going to come back via one of those channels. Like just type in your website because now they're familiar with it, right? But you still kind of want to you don't want that direct channel to now override the original channel.
Yeah.
So that's that. Yeah. And then I can show the processing rules. So Jim was talking about, there can be kind of a correlation between your tracking codes and your marketing channels if you use them to create your marketing channel rules, but you don't have to, right? Like this is what we're happening to use to create this display rule for campaign tracking code, but you could make it something totally else. It doesn't have to be campaign tracking code. It could be if a referring domain equals something, if a totally different query string parameter equals something, if it comes from this type of mobile device and this email, or you could make whatever combination of rules you wanted to. So that's why it's important to analyze them independently, I would say. And like Jen said, use your marketing channel detail to break down your marketing channels versus cutting it by campaign tracking.
And I should point out that the set the channels value to, that's your marketing channel detail. It doesn't specifically say marketing channel detail, but that is how you set the detail value.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so down here. So find another one. So these are set by campaign tracking code. My rules, like in my company, for example, we don't set the channels value to campaign tracking code. We often set it to referring domain, like in this one. So yeah, again, like these can be related, but don't have to be. So it's important to generally analyze them separately.
Yeah, like for me, like I don't even set it on the campaign tracking. I literally look specifically for the CID or the UTMs that build the rules out, simply because campaign tracking code has attribution on it. I think this is on the instance. I've never actually confirmed that, and I don't want to accidentally set a marketing channel based on an attributed value. So I always just look specifically at my campaigns, and then I set the channel's value, again, in correlation to whatever I've got. So if it's based on tracking codes, campaigns, I set my details to that. If it's a referrer, I set it to the referrer. If it's an organic search, I set it to the search engine. So depending on the type, I have it set specifically and quite differently, but that means that it's kind of always kind of in lockstep with whatever was driving that rule. But again, it's completely up to you guys what works for you. But just remember that if the tracking codes are important to you at the marketing channel level, you got to be very cognizant of you can't like really match marketing, like the tracking codes to your marketing channels without potential pain due to those different attributions. Okay, we've got a couple of questions coming in.
Yeah, bots and AI.
Okay.
Yeah, our two favorite topics.
So as far as bot traffic.
You want to read out the question just so it's in the recording?
So, the question is, we saw a spike on form submissions from organic traffic. We suspect this is from bots. What is the best practice to analyze bots from organic traffic? There's another big topic. I mean, there are whole companies out there that their whole job, their whole spiel is run your data through them. They'll eliminate the bots for you. If you went to Summit, there's like 5 different booths set up just for that, basically. What most people do is they make a segment, I think, to filter a lot of these out. There's a whole lot of telltale signs. You can look at IP addresses. Some of them, like if they start with zeros, I think they're usually bots. A couple of geolocations are usually bots. I think Asheville is one of them. Screen or screen size a lot of times is set to 0 or like 1 for bots. Sometimes you can look at domain and find out who they are. So there's a whole lot of different ways to identify bots. Problem is a lot of them change and spoof and fake things out. And then obviously like single page views, stuff like that. A lot of those are usually bots as well. And I think the reason that there's not usually a standard, like this is what we set up for bots, like at a higher level from Adobe or even Google, really, they're changing so much that it's really, really, really hard to keep up with them. But yeah, most people, they'll filter them out at the campaign or at the workspace level, sometimes before your data even gets to Adobe. If you're running through another service or something, a lot of people will start taking them all out that way. But there's really not a standard. Like I said, most people, at least that I've seen, most people use a segment, do their best to identify bots. There's a whole lot of different documentation out there about how to identify different bots, put that into a segment, and then just remove all that traffic. I know in CJA specifically, you can actually add a segment to the data view, the entire data view. So you can just remove bots at the data view level, and then nobody has to put a segment at the top of each panel or anything like that. That's nice. It just kind of slows down the data view a little bit because everything's still being processed by that filter as well. Kind of the same deal with AI. AI usually tells you that it's AI. If you look at the referrer or its domain, you can usually see it. I haven't seen where that traffic has gotten large enough on anything that I have access to or had access to in the past to where it really made a huge impact, which is a little bit, I'd actually say that was a little bit of a letdown. I was looking for a bigger hit from AI from my data. Like, oh man, this is big new information. It really wasn't. It was such a small amount of people or such a small amount of traffic that it really wasn't that big of a deal, at least yet. So yeah. Repeat this. Oh, so yeah, some of the suggestions I had as far as identifying bots. There's a few geolocations like Asheville, I think it's North Carolina. Is it Asheville? I think that are known bot hubs that you'll see a ton of traffic coming from there in the spike. That's all bots. There's like an Amazon center there. So that's generally all bots. If the viewport or like the screen size is set to 1 or 0, those are a bot. What else did I say? There's a couple of different things. Single page bounces, or if there's no events firing other than viewing the page. Well,
it depends on your business.
That isn't always a bot, but it's more likely to be one. If the OS is like Linux, again, there are Linux users. I'm a Linux user sometimes, but a lot of times they're more often than not bots or hackers. So,
picking on Linux today. All right.
I love Linux. It's a fact, but yeah. So there's a few things like that, and like I said, there's articles all over the place about how to identify bots. Their IP addresses sometimes are a little bit different. If you can actually get to that, which is sometimes hard to get.
Yeah, this is something I've been going down the painful road of lately as well. So there's a few like basic things you can do right in Adobe Admin. You can use the IAB bot filtering checkbox. You can block other IPs or user agents. You can Google bots, they're not bad bots, but we don't want them in our customer traffic. So Google and other good bots usually publish their list of known IPs, so we go in and block those as well. We partner heavily with our information security team to find other IPs and user agents that are either good or bad players and block those. My company uses something called a scroll metric. There's still going to be legitimate customers who will truly bounce and leave. But we also, probably like Jen, right? You guys have articles, content that people can come to the page and they could spend several minutes reading, but if they don't do anything else, they can still show up as a bounce. Yeah. So we have a scroll metric for server call purposes that just fires the very first time in a visit that someone does that. But that's an indicator to us that it's more of a quality visit than like if they're engaging in a long article, right? They have at least scrolled on the page. That's been a really helpful metric for us for a lot of different reasons. And one is that it's usually not a bot if that happens, right? They're hitting a page and it's a bounce, a single page hit, but they're scrolling and engaged. So that's something I recommend if you can do that. Otherwise, like lots of hits in a short time frame. Nick mentioned there's lots of different articles out there about like known bad players, like these really old mobile devices, browsers, operating systems, stuff like that you can usually find and create segments for. And when you create the segment, you can validate it. You can say like, oh, well, no, there are real legitimate activities in that segment. So let me go and fine tune that segment a little bit to only, get out the non-human behavior. We're working on a project. There's some things you can do in Adobe Launch. There's a few good articles on Experience League. If you check those out that I've been reading a lot of lately. We're working on a project with our info security team they have published cookies in our header files, and we can use those to block them in Adobe Launch. So again, like good bots are still allowed to crawl our site, but we don't want to capture them. So there are rules you can set up in Adobe Launch to block them there. We're also working with Botify and stuff like that, which is a third-party vendor. And another cool thing we're exploring is if it hasn't been built yet, but if we're detecting that it's a bot, we'll send them to like a fake content like page. So customers aren't affected. Bots will still go to that page and be able to crawl it, but it's not hitting our domain. So it doesn't get counted in Adobe Analytics. But then what we're doing is adding Adobe Analytics tagging to that page that just, again, fires like the first time in a visit for server calls. And we're capturing all the IP address that hits that page and then going back to these Adobe admin settings and blocking that traffic. So that's been a kind of a fun, circuitous workaround we've been doing lately.
Yeah, there's lots of different methods. There's no one easy button, unfortunately. The easiest button you're going to have is the IAB bot list, which you can enable on your suites, which should get rid of all the good bots like Google and Bing and Yahoo, because again, good bots they don't try to hide the fact that they're bots, and so
Skynet.
They're legitimately saying, yep, we're a bot, and they can be immediately excluded. But it's the bad bots that now cause everyone headaches.
Right.
Skynet, Jen.
Yeah, it is.
And then, I saw the question on AI, which Nick addressed as well. That's an area I've just started to explore. I'm interested in learning more about it.
Yeah, we started doing that too. I was also like Nick. I was surprised how little traffic I could find coming from like OpenAI and ChatGPT. I looked in basically our referrers, and I think in like the last 6 months, I think maybe I got 2,000 hits. So I was really surprised how low it was for us, unless they aren't actually running all the tracking. Like maybe they're getting smart and they're going, oh, this is a known tracking, like we won't execute this. I don't know, because some sites can, selectively not trigger what's going on. All right. I guess, we also have another question. Back to marketing channels. If we have the same number of direct traffic and campaign traffic to the same page on the same day, does that mean we have some duplicate tracking going on? How do we debug this? Well, not necessarily. I mean, if somebody is literally coming into a page with a campaign, that should, but you're saying direct traffic. I'm not sure. Like, are you saying that it's?
You mean so like when you look at that page, you're seeing the same number of hits from the marketing channel direct traffic and the marketing channel campaign traffic, whatever that's labeled, on the same page on the same day.
I mean, it could be, your marketing channels aren't set up properly to capture the campaigns. I'm not sure exactly. I'd have to see some of the data.
That'd be interesting.
But keep in mind, things like newsletters. We have as a news organization, we have a lot of newsletters that go out. Newsletters, every link on those newsletters have campaigns on them. But most newsletters don't actually have a refer. So they track as, if you're looking at your refer, they track as direct. But in our marketing channels and our tracking codes, they obviously count as newsletters. So again, I'm not sure if you're talking about like direct as in your referrer direct. Could be things like newsletters. It could be people opening a new tab where the referrer doesn't get set. It could be people using apps. So like say the Facebook app, the Reddit app, if people are clicking on links within the app and opening up your website, a lot of apps don't actually put in referrer information. Mm-hmm. So kind of going back to the rules that Megan was showing, like setting up all those different rules, I actually do a multi-pronged attack on that, wherein I say, if the referrer is, from social media, put it to social media. But then I put in a secondary rule that says, I don't even look at the referrer. I just look at, does my UTM have social media? And I still track that as social media, because it's the only way to capture those app direct into our sites that aren't setting refers. So again, without seeing your data, it's kind of hard to specify what might be going on, but debugging is debugging. It's often you gotta try correlating this piece of information and that piece of information and this, and getting an idea and going, okay, let's test this scenario out, and literally going to social media and running through a test, clicking on a link and following it through and seeing what is actually being captured to try and understand what's going on. And it's never easy. You can also brainstorm with not just your analytics team, but talk to your developers, talk to your
marketers. Ask your marketers what they're doing too.
Yeah, and ask your marketers what they're doing. Yep. Try to work with the other teams to understand what's going on, to see, is it something that isn't being captured properly in the marketing channel rules? Is it something that is broken technology-wise? Like maybe your website is actually redirecting. Maybe somebody clicks on a link, the website goes, I need to make a correction. It's missing a trailing slash. So it redirects it to trailing slash with your campaigns. It's not passing the referrer through.
Yeah, the debugging the debugging in real time, I say ish, because you can see what's happening, if you're using between Charles and between using the AEP, I say Project Griffin, the AEP assurance, between those kinds of tools, I would say you can get yourself pretty well there, because the thing is what you're wanting to do is you're wanting to understand both what's happening with the app and how it's capturing the campaign tracking. And then you also want to see what's actually coming. Whoops, I keep bumping my microphone. Sorry. What's actually coming over to the tool. So it's literally what's coming in via, whether it's the website or the app, or how it's actually being captured, but then on that back end, how it's actually filtering into the website, or into Adobe Analytics as well. So it's a multifaceted way of debugging. And the problem is when it comes into Adobe Analytics, you're waiting anywhere from 15 minutes to an hour to actually see how it's actually truly come in. So not quite real time, 15 minutes, sort of. So you unfortunately gotta wait. So that's just how it is. So you can sort of see it. I mean, if it's firing more than a couple of calls, you can see that right away. So you can see the double call type stuff. But if you're to see the actual, what it looks like reporting wise, you're gonna have to wait just a little bit to see what it's actually doing once, if when you've got processing rules, classifications, marketing channel rules, all of that stuff. And that's why I say if you're doing anything with mobile app and all that stuff, if you can have AEP assurance in place, that's going to make your job easier.
Yeah, because it will show you your post-process data. And
yes,
in case anyone here has been using the Adobe Cloud or AEP, like the debugger tool for web, if you may have noticed that for the longest time, the post-processing was broken. It's been fixed. Finally.
Oh, yay!
Finally, we can see post-process data again.
Awesome.
Good timing.
Yeah, I'll add like a couple things I would check, Leanne, is making sure that your override settings, like we showed, are not checked for direct, right? Because that could be confusing things. I would also check the redirect thing. That's often a culprit of like double marketing channel situations, right? Like we had a situation a few years ago where we redesigned our page and we were just sending everyone pointing to the new URL. So customers would come in from external traffic, click the link, hit our page, and that original hit got counted with the direct traffic, but then they'd show up as a like internal URL. Or like if you didn't have internal URLs enabled, it might show up as direct, right? So I would definitely check the redirect thing, and just make sure there's nothing funky going on there. Or like we've seen some weird behavior lately from, not lately, it's probably going on all the time, but like Facebook apps, like when you use the Facebook app on your phone, like depending on if you're in browser or not in browser, if you're online or offline, things like that can do some strange things where like it'll come in and hit your site, but like for us, we're having an issue right now where it's counted as others, but then immediately goes to like our correct paid channel, but it counts as others first because it's like not being associated with the right thing. So I would, as much as you can, try to get an actual ad, click through it with all your assurance and dev tools and stuff open and see what's firing where. And like if you can, go put your own like query string parameter test on there, so you can like like we might have like carmax.com like question mark UTM source equals Megan test 61225. Like go see how that's firing in prod and in your dev report suite and see where you show up. Those are just some extra troubleshooting things you can do.
I just shared 2 links for you because somebody said AEP assurance. There's a link out there actually regarding AEP assurance, formerly known as Project Griffin. And then the other one is a session that Jen and I did a little while back with Jeff Chasen, of all people, really great guy, about Project Griffin. And I think it was a very valuable session that we did. So if you want to take a look at those 2 things, I believe it'll really help you understand it quite a lot more. What's really cool is instead of having to do all this major, there's still there's configuration that has to be done in the mobile app, in your mobile app setup. However, what's really nice is for doing the debugging, you actually get to scan a QR code. and then it takes you in and you can start doing the debugging that way. It's a lot easier than having to do some of the setup you have to do with, like, Charles Proxy and all that stuff. And some people talk about, oh, you gotta have a MacBook and do, it's like all this hokey pokey stuff. I feel like it's a lot easier on the end user to do the debugging than some of the other ways. Jen could probably tell you a little bit more about it than I can. I haven't done it yet, but I'm trying to get it done with our new with the organization I just joined. So yeah,
it's a game changer, honestly. I mean, mobile app testing used to be the worst because even when you were using proxy checkers, you could see what was being sent to Adobe, but you couldn't see what the post-processing was doing, which meant you had to wait an hour. And then you had to see, did this map here, did that map there, did this do this, did that do that? And it was very easy to miss stuff. With AEP assurance, you may have to wait, 30 seconds, but it will actually pass back, hey, here's everything in post-process. So you can actually see the final result of the post-processing data right there in the view, which again means you can go, oops, that's not mapped, or that's mapped incorrectly, or I completely, we missed this or that, or head scratcher, where the heck is that coming from? It can happen. But yeah, it's a lot easier than a proxy checker. Unfortunately, having to deal with multiple analytics tools, I still have to use the proxy for other stuff. So it's like I get this for Adobe, and then I have to still use proxy elsewise. But
all right, well, looks like we're right up on time here.
Yep. So yeah, thank you, all the other champions for joining and your great advice. Thank you for everyone else who joined. You can find us on LinkedIn or Experience League. Experience League is probably the best place to ask us, or there's not just champions, but many Adobe experts on there to go ask your questions to. And as a reminder, we do this every month. This recording will be shared. Please look forward to the next one and submit questions in advance or in the chat. It's always nice to have you guys here and see what's going on in the analytics world. Hope everyone has a great rest of your day. Happy summer.
yes.
Yep.
Thank you for sharing your hour with us.
Bye, y'all.